Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm well, and yourself today?
I'm good.
It's not quite 10
Aaron,
o'clock.
do we have a quorum?
We do. It is not quite 10 o'clock, and we're still clearing the waiting room. So if you want to give
Okay,
it just a moment, I'll let you know when we're clear.
thank you.
But I have you, Melanie, Sherry, and Doug. So if I missed anybody or somebody's logged in under an alternate name, let me know. Oh, Wayne, there you are. I even have a check mark by your name. Sorry about that.
Hello, Doug. Hello, Wayne.
Good morning.
Hello, Melanie.
Hi, Rick. How are
Morning,
you?
Ray.
Sherry, hello.
Hello.
It is 10 o'clock and your waiting room is clear, and you do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the June 4th meeting of the IDD Technical Advisory Committee. I am Rick Christman, and our first order of business is the approval of the April 2nd, 2022 minutes, which we've received. We have a motion to approve
So move.
and a second.
Second.
I'll second it, Rick.
Okay, thanks. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All right. Our next item, it looks like we got a little, it's actually PDS corrective action plan request. Can we get a copy of the We understand there is a PDS corrective action plan. Is that correct?
Yes, we are on a PDS corrective action plan with CMS.
Okay, yeah, my audio is not very good. Is that a yes?
Yes,
Okay, can we receive a copy of that?
we do not have the actual, we've just been having meetings with CMS. We do not have the actual document from CMS.
Okay, so we would request that from CMS?
No, I mean, it's still Rick. I mean, you can request information from CMS. You can request information from whoever you want, of course, but we don't have that. I don't have it to share with you right now, is what I'm saying. So we are meeting with them. I believe we're working on scheduling a meeting in the next couple weeks.
Okay, I'm trying to find my volume button here. I'm sorry, it's just, I can't hear very well. Okay, is Amy on the line here? Amy Stade?
I'm here.
Is that what you were that's what we're looking for? Hi, Amy. The PDS corrective action plan request. And I didn't quite hear what was said, but CMS has it apparently.
Well, CMS issues it, Rick. So Amy, if you can send me what questions you have, I mean, we can answer questions. I just don't have a document to be able to send.
Is there a document?
Yeah,
There is not a document, right? That's what it's it, and maybe Rick, I think because you're having audio issues, you weren't able to hear me. There is not a document that I can send you from CMS right now.
CMS does not have a document.
CMS has a document they are working on. I do not have the final version to be able to send to you. It is with CMS right now.
So they don't have a final version of the document.
yeah.
They do. Then you saw it on the agenda. Did you see it on the
they
agenda?
don't. She's saying they don't have a final version of the document that is able to be shared
Does
yet.
CMS have a final version of the document?
No, they do not,
No.
Rick. They
Okay,
are
I'm sorry.
still working on it. We are meeting
Okay.
with them. So
All right.
we do not, neither of us have a final version of that document yet.
It does not exist.
A final version does not exist that I can share.
Okay. Is there any update on gathering information regarding involuntary terminations role? Is this something we want to pursue? I think at the last meeting, there had been like 64 involuntary terminations in the last 6 months.
We are working.
Do we know exactly how many, like today, how many involuntary terminations there are?
I did not, that was not on the agenda, Rick, so I did not gather that data again.
Well, you are aware that we were interested in this.
You're interested in a lot of things, but it was not on the agenda, so I did not
I see it
prepare
right
for
here
that.
on the agenda.
An update on gathering information regarding involuntary terminations role. I have an update on that.
You do or don't?
I do have an update on that. I'm sorry,
Oh.
is everybody having trouble hearing me?
No, I hear you really well. This is
Okay.
Mel.
Okay. So we are working on a survey that's going to be a combination of two things. As you all know, we were awarded several slots in the upcoming budget. We are launching a survey that's going to look at provider capacity, as well as we're also going to look at we're going to ask questions about involuntary terminations. We're going to do one survey so providers are not getting inundated with multiple surveys. So we are working on that survey right now. I have the questions that you all had submitted to us. So we are working on that right now, finalizing that survey to go out to providers. But we also want to look at capacity for providers to take on new individuals, because as we, have these new slots, we want to make sure, we want to see, what does our provider network look like? Who is interested in taking on new providers? Who has the capacity to take on new provider or new, I'm not providers, new members?
Okay, when do you have any notion as to when that survey will be available or
It
be
will
sent
be
out?
within the next 2 weeks.
That is great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rick, this is Melanie. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
And thank you. And thanks, Pam, for that update. I appreciate that. In the survey that you are putting together for providers, is there, when somebody accepts, I know they get the referral packet, and when a provider agency accepts a new client, are there questions that are asked in regards to, capacity, or is that what you're trying to establish with this survey?
We want to ask, we want to understand exactly what is happening when case managers reach out. So when they do referrals,
Okay.
either for new clients or for clients that are choosing to switch providers or that have had an involuntary termination issued. We want to understand what information is shared, what questions they are asking as a potentially new accepting provider, and what information is being shared by the case manager. And where the member is in all of this, because I will tell you, I've been very disappointed lately in several situations that we've had where the member or, the member or their rep or, the member with their authorized representative have been left out of all of the decisions and all of the discussions. And this is supposed to be a person-centered waiver. They should be at the forefront of these decisions, and they're not being considered a lot of times, and their input is not being gathered.
Yeah. And that's awesome. Thank you so much for being thoughtful about that kind of issue, because I think it can only make the system, it can only improve the system when everybody is at the table. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for getting that survey put together. Role of mobile crisis units for people with IDD. Is someone going to provide some information on that?
I have something. Leslie gave me the information. So the General Assembly did not fund mobile crisis in the budget, and we are currently evaluating other options.
Wow. Pam, can I talk again?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry to ask so many questions. Is this something that maybe might be discussed with the interim legislative committees? You know, would this be a topic that they might have testimony or people talk about, do you think?
Potentially they might. I
Okay.
I
Okay.
know that you know, I can't speak to what
Sure.
they will or won't do for sure, but yeah, I mean it um is certainly something that could happen. Yeah.
I didn't realize that that didn't get funded, so that's really too bad. But thank you for the information.
And when we say it didn't get funded, that means for all people, right?
For
People,
all the mobile crisis in general did not get funded for any population.
yeah, that was a surprise. I thought it was
Yeah.
done. Is there anything to report on the community settings rule?
We are currently, so CMS offered all states an opportunity to do a cap on community settings rule, just because of COVID and all of the disruption in the middle of that. So Kentucky did, we're on a corrective action plan for that, but it was a voluntary, it was kind of a, it wasn't a punitive thing. It was something that all states did. We had to go back and review certain settings that in the initial review were deemed as in the heightened scrutiny bucket. So we have reviewed those settings, are in the process of finishing those settings. Most of them, I believe, have met criteria, either because the criteria slightly changed. Some of them have moved. Some of them have very strong risk mitigation plans, and so there's not, while they may fit in that description of in the heightened scrutiny bucket, they have mitigation plans for the things that make them fit that category. So we actually meet with CMS next week to talk about final rule again, but we are largely we are in compliance. It was those additional settings that we needed to go back and review.
Well, states like Kentucky will eventually will get to a point where our compliance with the community settings rule is final, right?
Well, our compliance plan, all of that was already done. We
Okay.
have to, we evaluate that is something that's evaluated with every brand new provider that comes on at every research. It's
I
something
see.
that's a continuous evaluation. It's not
Okay.
something that you're ever done
Right.
with.
Yeah.
That's true. But our plan has been accepted.
Our plan was one of the first, if not
Or
the
like
first, that was accepted. Yes.
I think it was the second, actually, wasn't it, or something like that. Yeah, so we did real well. Melanie, you had a question about critical incident reports, numbers, self-injured.
Yeah, yeah, and this might tie in really nicely with all the heightened scrutiny. A long time ago, I got asked to be on a committee that reviewed the heightened
packets.
scrutiny. The packets, yes, and
Yeah.
it was a while ago. But the reason I'm asking is about critical incidents, because I had gotten a copy of I think you sent it out, Pam, the instructions for how critical incidents were collected and reported. And I just wanted to get a handle, because in the like the frequency, the kinds of incidences that were reported, I guess they would go to you or your office. If they're unintentional or intentional, you know, those kinds of injuries. Is there anywhere where that compilation of information is placed?
Yes, so we the providers are required to use MWMA, so the Medicaid Waiver Management Application, to report critical incidents, as well as non-critical incidents. So if you want to give me send, you know, specifically what you want. Now I know what was on the agenda, so it does not, the reporting categories don't go into the level of detail of the number
Sure.
of that are self-injury necessarily or injuries by staff. That we get, we review every single critical
Yeah.
incident that we get. And so that's something we capture in reviews, and we look at, we do trending, we look at, individuals, we look at the number of, incident reports by agency, by individual. We look at it in multiple different ways. But I have by, the different categories. I have, illness, injury. I have, the abuse, neglect, exploitation categories. We have there's, I think do I still have it up? Because I was looking at, let me see if I still have one of them up. Illness, injury is the biggest, is our biggest bucket of, because so much stuff falls in there. We look at medication errors.
Mhm.
We look at, if there is suicidal or homicidal ideations, or I think this is a small one that I was looking at. This is an ABI one, but we have a lot of data around critical incidents. If you want to give, reach out with some more what you'd like to see, I can work on pulling together more of that information.
No, and I appreciate that. It's just trying to get a better handle, because I hear through in my world that I reside in, I hear oftentimes about scenarios where an individual has been for whatever reason injured or treated in an inappropriate way, for lack of a better way to say it. And I don't know what's true. I know that long time ago when I used to work at Kiprick, I would sit in and hear about the injury fatality review, and I know that that's not a part of this process, but it's just trying to get a better handle in terms of what is going on in our state, and is it something from a safety perspective that we need to focus on more in the future, because a lot of times it came as a result of folks not being trained or having the capacity, like you talked about earlier, to meet the needs of some of these unique individuals. So anything that you would be a report or something that you'd be willing to share, that I would be very interested in taking a look at it, so I can better understand and be a better servant on this TAC.
Yeah, thank you. What are the categories? Are there categories of incident reports?
There are, so just for example, there's a behavior category, there is death, elopement, an environmental category, illness and injury, medication, public health concerns.
So for example,
there is a reporting guide that's out on the website that for providers that has a lot of this information in it.
good.
And I had gotten a copy of that I think I have. It's from 2021. I don't know if that's the most recent one or not, Pam, but
I believe that is the most recent one. We will be we're evaluating it now but we have not made, I believe 2021 is the most recent version of that.
I remember when I did work at Kiprick, the categories that you all have are very similar to what was used when they reported data for children and youth and adults, and so it was helpful to kind of see the comparison. But I know it's a unique population that you're having to keep this kind of data on for the individuals that are receiving services through the waivers and whatnot, both I guess children and adults. So there's probably additional information that you have to capture in your data collection. But it is really interesting to look at what the categories are, because I bet there's a correlation between the injuries that you all are seeing at your level and kind of the ongoing concerns about capacity and safety for providers. So I think it's a having a loved one that he falls into some of those categories. I get it. They can be challenging to deal with. But on the flip side, it kind of gives you guidance in terms of, okay, we need to do more training in this area, on injury and assault and that kind of stuff. So it would help me to know a little bit more about the actual numbers, if it's a critical number of things that are occurring in our state, or it's only a few.
For example, then you would have a report on incidents that involved injuries, right, Pam? Yeah, so that's great. I see some hands raised. Johnny, you had a question?
I do, thanks, and good morning. I had a question back on the community settings rule for Pam. Pam, do you know how many settings are currently under heightened scrutiny that you're kind of looking to mitigate or work with?
I do not have that on hand, Johnny, but I can get that. A lot of the ones when we went back and looked at the change that came out to the rule, there were several that kind of fell out of that bucket, because there was some where it looked at, if they were on the same street. I mean, there were some changes to that. So I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I can get that number. If we want to put that on the agenda for next time, I can have that information.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. I was just curious, is it a
It's
lot?
not, no, it's not a
Less than
big
20
number.
or more?
No, it's more than 20, but it's still, it was not a number that and especially when you think about, when you say residential, you may have, one provider number, but they may have 5 houses or 6 houses.
Sure.
So, it kind of, you have to think about it in the terms of the actual houses or settings that they have, apartments that they have, or in that way you can't do it. It's like you can't do it as a provider to
Right.
setting ratio. So but it's still, it was not an alarming number.
When
Okay,
I was on that committee, I think that there were 26 that were in that category.
That was the first group. So
Yeah.
so one group got looked at, and I think there were 3 other groups that for whatever reason that process, it stopped. I think there was question about feedback from CMS. I mean, there was, and then COVID happened, and then so I mean there was just a lot in the middle of all of that. But I think that it was I don't want to guess the number because I'm going to get it wrong, but I will say I do not believe we had any providers that we were terribly concerned about. I think that all of our providers had done a great job with having mitigation plans, and there was access to the greater community and freedom of choice, and there was not a provider that I can think of that we have been, gosh, we're really concerned about what they're going to do. So
Were all the settings that are in heightened scrutiny, are they all residential?
they are all there was, I think, 2 adult daycares maybe that were on the site of a nursing facility, and I believe one of those has moved and the other one may have closed, or but there were a couple adult days, but the bulk of them were residential settings.
Thank you. Amy, I see your hand raised also. Amy?
I was muted, sorry. I forgot to unmute. We've been doing this for years now and still can't get the hang of it.
I finally got my volume fixed.
I just, given Melanie's questions about incidents and things, I just wanted to note something that I thought maybe the group that I've recently learned about that I thought the group might be interested in. Actually, 2 things. Number one, the state of Pennsylvania has recently contracted with a kind of like a technology provider to do incident reporting tracking, and it's a system that the state uses and providers use to track incidents, to keep track of exactly what's happening. But both the state and individual providers can trend and track their own incidents to see what's happening, and it even kind of dives down to, is there a certain staff that's involved in more incidents than other incidents? But what's also really interesting is that it fully integrates with the HRST. And they're finding in Pennsylvania that oftentimes certain individuals are having certain incidents or behaviors related to health events too. And they've been able to look at all this data that's available and combine it to really dive down into why incidents are happening. And they're finding, obviously some health related. They're thankfully identifying maybe some bad Apple staff. It's just really interesting. And I just thought the group may be interested in that. And two, the CMS has recently released what's being colloquially called the Medicaid Access Rule, and it's like this giant 1,000-page rule that has a lot of stuff in it, a lot of stuff that doesn't affect waiver services, but a lot that does. And one of the things that it mentions is it talks a lot about incident reporting systems and tracking and electronic systems. And obviously, this is all very new, and everybody's waiting for more guidance. But it's likely that we're going to see some more federal requirements around like tracking and data analysis with incident reportings that could be really interesting and exciting for the future. So I just thought you guys would like to hear about that.
Well, and we do have, so within MWMA, we have a lot of those capabilities, as well as looking at, and it's part of the access rule, as well as, there's about 8 rules that touch Medicaid in some shape or fashion, that we're going to have to review and comply with. But incidents, looking at how, because an incident report data is only as good as the data that gets reported. And you can mandate it, but you need to look for ways that you find incidents that potentially are not being reported. So we're looking at that now. How do we look at our claims data to catch potential incidents where something that should have been reported that wasn't reported? Because I will tell you, the incident reports that we get from individuals in residential is much better quality, and we get, I think we have a much higher compliance rate than individuals that are in participant directed services, because you don't have many times that's a family member providing services, so that things aren't getting reported back to the case manager. So incidents aren't getting reported as much in those populations.
That's a really good point. And there should be similarity across the board. I mean, I think from a parent perspective or caregiver perspective, I think that is so important, especially as you look down the road for a time period when the caregiver is no longer present in that individual's life. So.
Right, and we might see a relationship between involuntary terminations and incidents too, and maybe draw some conclusions from that.
Because it really is, point well taken, Rick. It's all about capacity of staff. When you get to a point where I remember when our son was young that there were attempts at controlling and dealing with his behavior, and then eventually it got to the point where they had no more tools in their toolbox, and that's when the capacity had ended, and that's when oftentimes things like restraint or some kind of injury would occur, and I think that is I get it. It's a very challenging thing to deal with, and I can't imagine if you had several clients living in your residential home that had that kind of behavior. That would be overwhelming.
Right. Is there any updates on the rate study, Pam?
So you can look for information to be coming out soon on that. So So I don't really have an update to give other than there is going to be information coming out soon with information about the rates.
Are you trying to get some of this done before the beginning of the next fiscal year? Like the rates? Is that possible?
So the rates, any changes in the rates will require a modification to the waiver applications, which will
Right.
require going out for public comment. Are we working on things? Absolutely. We are working on many initiatives right now. We are not just waiting for the start of the new fiscal year.
Okay, so hopefully very soon then. That's great.
There will be information coming out.
Good. And you mentioned there'll be new regulations, and to anything beyond that, in terms of other regulations other than rates?
We are redoing all of the regulations right now. They are out to all of our staff and the sister agencies, reviewing the first draft with comments due internally on Friday. And then we will meet to begin consolidating all of those comments and making any modifications and moving those forward through the process. But there are a lot of regs to touch. We're simplifying the regulations. So instead of SCL having like a 50-page regulation, it's going to be much more simple than that. We're going to, instead of having rates in the regulations, there's going to be we're going to refer to the posted fee schedule like what is out there right now. So we're doing a lot of work on those right now. We're reviewing any policy manuals that are still existing right now to update those and to change those, as well as any forms. There's a lot of work going on right now about updating information.
Among your goals, I understand, is to make the SEL and Michelle P more consistent between themselves.
It's to make all waivers consistent where it can be consistent. So for example, the definition of personal assistance and the definition of respite shouldn't be 5 or 6 different things. It's to make things easier for providers and for members to understand and to provide services.
Yeah, I think in particular, I think in our organization, it's community access and CLS and things like that. If there could be more consistency or absolute consistency, that would really be helpful for us. Amy, you have your hand raised.
Hi, sorry. Pam, I wondered if, and you may not be able to comment on this, and if so, that's okay. If you have any idea on or inclination about whether these will go through the regular reg process, or if we might be seeing some e-regs.
I do not know that at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Most of them have been going through the regular process, but I don't know. That decision is way above me, so.
Okay, thank you. Amy, did you have some questions on the PDS FAC follow-up questions? Did you have?
Yes, I did. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the PDS FAQ. That was really helpful. I did just want to share some feedback that I have gotten. They're more general concerns than specific concerns, kind of about PDS right now. And maybe these things are being considered as you guys write the regs. And if so, that would be wonderful. Specifically right now, I think providers are overwhelmingly concerned about what our governing document is right now, because providers have gotten several different answers to the tune of it's in the FAQ, or check the regulation, or look in the waiver. And all of those documents say slightly different things or have slightly different standards related to, depending on the service you're looking at or the answer you're looking for, especially when we're comparing the regulations to
the regulations are not, the regulations and the approved waivers are not going to match. The waiver applications are the governing document right now. The FAQ should match those. We wrote the regulations had things that needed to be changed in them even before we did, even before any of these changes. So, but always the waiver applications are the ultimate governing authority, because that is the agreement we have, federally with CMS. So those always, and then they should, and that's what we're working towards with the regulation rewrites, is they should all be in line, as well as,
Yeah.
it should go applications, regs, and then any policy manual, FAQ guidance, all of that should be, it should just it should get more specific as you get down each, to each level gets a little more specific. But the waiver applications with CMS right now are the governing, and the most up to date policy, what we are following with the waivers.
That was my understanding too. So my second comment would be then I don't know that that's been communicated to the Dale staff, because they are still sending providers references to the regulation, telling them to check the regulation, which is obviously a little concerning when you're getting mixed messaging from different governing bodies within the cabinet, especially obviously those answers are obviously more specific to PDS. But additionally, oftentimes when providers write in and ask PDS questions, they're given an answer, an HCB regulation answer, when obviously PDS spans the gamut of waivers. And I think providers have been concerned about that as well.
If you can have them send me those examples. So, because it always helps when I have, the specific examples.
Perfect. And then another specific concern is providers have been instructed that the EEF, that employee eligibility form that is on the website, is accurate, but at least for it, I've only checked for SCL, so I have not looked for the other waivers. At least for SCL, it is not accurate. It still lists drug screen and CPR and does not have the sex offender check information on there.
Okay.
So I just wondered.
Okay. We have somebody right now looking at all of those tools.
Okay.
But I'll note that one specifically, since you said, for sure that one.
Yeah, and again, this may be, you did say you were updating all of your forms and stuff, so this may be just wrapped up in that process. Thank you for that. I think providers would be really happy, especially the provider manuals, if those are going to be re-released and updated. I know that back in the day, those provider manuals were like the Bible, basically. So that would be great to see those come back and be updated. I know that providers would be happy about that. And then I guess my last comment is that we're seeing a lot of like best practice language being applied specifically in the PDS realm to different waivers when those standards are in the waivers.
Okay, send me that too, the examples.
Okay.
Please. And
I'll
ideally we all want to follow best practice, right? But
yes.
Yeah. But
I guess
how
the
it's
issue
communicated, I think, is
yeah, exactly. I guess the issue becomes is I think we just need to know what the best practice is.
Right. What everybody's view of the best practice is.
Yes,
So
exactly.
Okay.
And then we've been told that possibly there's an updated FAQ coming out. Is that
we are
true?
working on, so there's a couple things and I was trying to find them on my calendar, and why I cannot find them at this moment, I do not know. We have so there's a couple webinars that are coming up, as well as there's going to be like a training. So we're going to do I think it's on the 10th. So Monday the 10th, I think we have a participant and a provider. We should have both provider and participant. Yeah, the LRI webinars, and then there's another one a little bit closer to when we actually go live on July 1st. And we're doing there it is. It's the 20th and the 21st was the ones I couldn't find. So we're going to do the 20th. We're doing a question and answer session in the evening for the participants at 6:30. And then we're doing the provider one on Friday.
Okay, perfect. And thank you for those webinars. I've heard a lot of feedback that people are excited for the multiple opportunities to sign up for them. And then I have one last question, and it's a quick clarification, and I have a feeling you're going to tell me my inclination is right. Providers have been told that HCB, I'm trying to get this right in my head. HCB case management visits are required face to face up to 3 in the participant's home, excuse me, up to 3 times per year. But the applications say quarterly, so the applications rule in that instance.
Yes, and it should be, and I think that there is, if it hasn't, it may not have not gotten added yet. There's a clarification about the quarterly, like we don't want people going 6 months in between, you know, there being a face-to-face, because these face-to-face, they're important. I mean, there has been some really bad stuff that have happened to individuals that if there had been case managers in that home making a home visit, we would have known about. I mean, and I can't stress how much CMS also, that, you know, we are fortunate that we can continue having the telehealth option and having the ability to still do that. But, you know, that face-to-face is so important with individuals in their home. And I realize sometimes we see them at other service sites. So we may see them at the adult day, and that's great too. It's all important. And I think it helps the case manager understand, you know, what the members experience is like, you know, are these really meeting their needs? But that home visit is so critical to the health, safety, and welfare of those individuals that, you know, I can't tell you the bad things that have happened, and that if we had had eyes on, potentially there, you know, we could have maybe not prevented some of the situations, but we could have stopped things a lot sooner.
I think COVID made us all realize how important the face-to-face is, but also how important the telehealth aspect is. And I think you all did a really good job trying to balance those two different ideas in the waiver application. Do you also have any update about the training for the independent case managers to do the HCB and the Michelle P?
So the
PDS?
HCB has been done, and I
Okay.
believe it is out on the website. The Michelle P, I'll check on it. We had met with Dale, and I said, you know, really, Kate, so services are slightly different, right? But the concept and what you have to do different if you are doing PDS, if you're doing case management for somebody who's participant directing their services, that is largely the same, regardless of which waiver. I mean, you have to do the same things, regardless of which waiver the person is accessing services in. So we are looking at and working with Dale on how can we simplify that. But I do know they were working on getting that training scheduled for the Michelle P.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I
Lots
do
of
know
people are
we've
excited to get started.
certified, I think we have about 8 or 10 case management agencies that have went through and have been certified now to do case management for PDS. So
Do you know how many are in the queue?
I do not know. I haven't got that number lately, so I can ask, but I don't know. I don't know how many are in the queue. I do know for financial management, we've been working with about 3 different people right now, and they're in various stages of going back for additional information.
And just to clarify, to get certified, you would just communicate with your QA and then, you know,
You will
basically
go
write the
through
policies and
Dale. You go
procedures.
through Dale because
Oh, you
it's
go through
PDS.
Dale?
You go through Dale. Yes. Yes, you will
Okay.
go through Dale since it is PDS. Unless it's financial management is we are reviewing in Medicaid. So those requests are coming to April or myself.
Do you have a specific person that provider should reach out to at Dale, or is there just a general email?
That general email, and I will will have to see if somebody can say it's horrible. I don't know what, I can't remember what it is. Let me see if I'll get somebody to send that to me.
You're so
real
used
quick.
to saying Medicaid public comment at
I know it.
ky.gov.
No, I know. And honestly, if you can never go wrong sending something to there, it will get where it needs to go. If it comes there. But let me get the phone number and the email.
Thank you. That's all the PDS questions I have. Sorry, that was a lot.
Pam, since we're on this topic, has there ever been any consideration to like having a pre-test or some kind of certification for all case managers just to make sure that they understand the regulations and best practices, et cetera?
We are looking at additional training and information that can be provided to case managers. We give leeway to the to providers to understand who they're, we don't want to necessarily dictate beyond kind of the general qualifications, who you can hire, who you can't hire. And so we expect that is something that they, that, the agencies do, but we are looking at some additional information that can be put out there that would be resources that the providers could use themselves if they wanted to create, kind of their own. And I know that I saw one recently, a provider that had kind of like a as part of their onboarding, they had a kind of a testing and a checkoff for their new. I saw it both for DSPs and for case managers.
So you're saying you just leave the the issue of the qualifications and the knowledge of the case manager to the organization that's doing the case
We give the
management?
outline of the general of what the requirements are going, what you have to have as far as education or experience, but we don't want to dictate, we don't want to micromanage for providers who who they can hire, we give the general guidelines, and then some providers choose to make it more stringent than that.
Well, I was just thinking something more cut and dried, like understanding the regulations.
Well, and I would hope as a provider that is hiring a case manager that would be part of what you are training, the individuals on. And we offer training opportunities, for example, for new providers and we look at the providers, their policies for training and what they do.
Okay.
But we don't get into the day-to-day business of the providers.
Okay. Let's skip ahead.
Oh, I had one.
Go ahead.
What are the baseline academic requirements for someone to be a case manager?
I do not have that in front of me,
I
Melanie.
think they've
I
just
would have to
been,
look it up. It's a it's
Like a undergraduate degree or
it is
master's degree?
no, I think it's
used to be.
bachelor's and it is, but there is experience can substitute for education. And I will be honest, I have been looking at so much. If I quote it off the top of my head, I am going to get it wrong.
That's okay.
It is in the waiver applications, or if you want to send me an email, Melanie, I can
Okay, thank you.
send it to you. Yeah.
I was on it. There was a group that was looking at kind of increasing the number of case managers. And so I know that there was some discussion, but I never captured what the baseline academic requirements were. So,
and we
yes.
did add experience in there, because what we found is that sometimes
Yeah.
just because you have an education or have, a certain degree, it doesn't necessarily translate into making you a better case manager. There may
Yeah.
be different experiences that you've had that may translate. So we, through COVID, we were able to expand that through Appendix K. And so we did continue to keep that,
That's great.
those expanded qualifications.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
But again, I'm sure you agree with me, Pam, there should be some minimum expectations like in-person meetings and that sort of thing that we were talking
And
about.
that is in, yes, and that is in, that's why that is in that, in the application and will be in the regulation.
Okay. Let's skip ahead to Olmsted Act. Melanie, did you have some questions on
Yes,
that one also?
yes, I didn't mean to add so many things to the agenda, but
That's all
I
right.
think the Olmsted Act is in the process or are up for review for being reauthorized, and I'm just curious as to, what's happening in Kentucky around reauthorization. Is there a task force? Is there, and if there is a task force, are there representatives that are self-advocates and or caregivers that are being included in this effort?
Yes, so there is, we had the first meeting on May 30th, and it was led by UK by HDI, Kathy Shepherd Jones, and Elizabeth Crease, and Johnny, I'm blanking on his last name, Colette, that formed this OCAC, the Olmsted Community Advisory Committee. It is made up of, there are multiple cabinet staff across, multiple agencies. There's providers, there's members, there's advocates that are part of that. And I know they are, we are just getting started. That was kind of the introductory meeting on the 30th, but there's going to be multiple work groups that come out of that, that come out of this larger advisory committee, but lots of work already starting to happen on Olmsted.
It,
And there's lots of people involved.
are those meetings open to the public?
I honestly don't know. I don't know why they would not be. I can ask and see, or if there's people that are interested in being involved,
Yeah.
who they need to contact.
Yeah, I would be interested in being involved, but I just didn't know if I, met whatever the criteria was to be
And honestly,
included.
I was an invitee, so I will tell you, I was not in. So, but I can reach out to Kathy.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks. Was that helpful, Melanie?
Yes, thank you. But what is the timeline too? I don't know if they gave you that information, but is it does it have to be completed within a year's time, 5 years time? I mean, is there kind of um a time constraint in regards to when things have to be put in place for the reauthorization?
There, I don't know that we got to the timeline specifically. I'm looking at trying to pull up my this initial meeting. We really just covered kind of the brief history of it,
Yeah.
what the vision and charge was for this group. Kind of met everybody. They did briefly go over the evaluation process and timeline, but I don't think we haven't gotten the notes back yet. But I'll get you connected with Kathy.
Oh, okay. All right. That's great. Because I'm also, this has nothing to do with this group, but the Autism Cares Act is up for reauthorization. And if it's not, in compliance, it sunsets in September. So I didn't know if there was the same kind of urgency around the Olmsted Act. I'm guessing that there probably has been something put in place in terms of when you have to have these things put together, by a certain date. So they make sure that they get all their ducks in a row, so to speak. So I was just curious.
Okay, thank you. What waiting list is our next agenda item?
Okay, so where's my paper? Okay, so for SCL, currently there are 3,525 people on the waiting list. No emergency category, 67 in the urgent, 3458 in future planning. HCB, there's 2,035 individuals on the wait list, and Michelle P, there is 9,125. And I have a question for this group, or kind of something for this group to see if you all want to take on. Michelle P, so that wait list continues to grow. However, since 2018, we have been continuously allocating slots, and we have yet to reach even the 10,500 number, or even close to that close to that number. Each time we allocate slots, about 50% of those end up not being used. The person doesn't want it. They're getting services on another waiver. They're happy. They didn't know what they signed up for. We can't find them despite, and I think we have detectives that work on this. I mean, honestly, we try everything we can to find these individuals. But to me, it's very curious that wait list continues to grow, yet we can't seem to actually get people into services. And it's not because, they get approved and we're waiting on services starting. It's them actually completing the Medicaid process, finishing the Medicaid eligibility process, or just completing the getting to an assessment. And we even have, the CMHCs even get a list of the individuals when we allocate now, and we're not even waiting necessarily for the individual to reach out to request an assessment. They're reaching out to, schedule those assessments. So to me, it just seems it's kind of a mystery that the wait list continues to grow at the rate that it does, yet we don't seem to be getting, that we have a 50%, almost a 50% rate of slots going back in to be reallocated each time. So
Pam, did you say people are on the waiting list who have not yet been assessed? Or did I get that wrong?
the
No.
people on the wait list have not had an assessment.
Okay.
Oh, how can you really? I didn't think. I
No,
thought
to
you
go
had
on
to
the
have
wait,
it.
no, to go on the wait list,
Oh.
you have to say, I have an ID or a DD. For Michelle P, it's I have an
Yeah.
ID or a DD. And that's
Wow.
all to go. It's really more of an interest list than it is a wait
Yeah.
list, because there are individuals that do not qualify after they get a slot allocated. But, and before we had the application process through MWMA, they only had to fill out a form and just say, I want to be on the wait list. So and I think we finally have gotten through all of those, the time frame that was happening. And I think we finally have gotten through all of those individuals. But, my favorite example of an application we got was the diagnosis was toothless and skinny, but they wanted to be, they filled out a form and they wanted to be on the Michelle P wait list. So, in the beginning, that's what created this list is, people just, we had providers that were going out and saying, hey, sign up, fill out this form.
Right.
And people had no idea what they were even signing up for.
Right.
Oh, gosh.
Right. Is there a reason why we don't assess people before they go on the waiting list? Is that really too big of a job, or?
Was not the process. As we're evaluating wait list, we may look at how we want to change that now, because for example, for SCL, there is much more information before you go on that list that you have to provide. For brain injury, when we have brain injury, when we don't currently have a brain injury wait list, but that is similar to SCL, there's much more information that has to be provided. For HCB is similar to Michelle P. You just have to either be 65 or older, or have a physical disability. Now, again, like I said, these really are interest lists, because they're not necessarily, you don't know that everybody on that list is really waiting for services, because they may not qualify for services.
Yeah, and that's really misleading, isn't it?
It is misleading, yes.
Yeah.
So I think as we continue to work through the assessment that we have to do as part of House Bill 6, that was in part of the actions that we have to take, we'll be looking at that. There's several things we have to report back, as well as just in general, we have a work group that is working on looking at wait lists. We've talked to several other states that have eliminated their wait list, or that have done other things. So we are looking at that as well. But again, I will say, really, when you look at HCB and Michelle P, it's more of an interest list. It's somebody that said, hey, I have this diagnosis and I would like services. It doesn't mean they even know what services they think they want to get. So
Right. That's interesting. Amy, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. Just anecdotally, Pam, something that we have seen Obviously, some of these individuals who are on the Michelle P. waitlist are currently getting services through the HCB waiver, which does, allow them to have a paid caregiver of some sort, et cetera. And that's wonderful. And that's really helping a lot of families. And I think some of this might be a little bit of an education piece that some of these individuals or families of individuals may not realize the range of services that an individual would likely have access to on the Michelle P. waiver if they, so qualify, behavior supports, etc. Another thing that we've anecdotally seen in some instances, and again, this is not an across the board characterization at all, but we've seen a reluctance of some paid caregivers to approve additional services that may reduce their paid hours, thereby, a reluctance to engage in additional kinds of support other than that, caregiving service. So that may be something else going on that's at play here related to that.
Well, and I will also say that these individuals have access to state plan services. And for the most part, what we see is they don't access the state plan services. They don't access the, even when they are on Michelle P. and have access to behavior services, they do not access those services. And so the services that they're getting in HCB are really the exact same services that they are going to access on Michelle P. So it's very interesting looking at and we're doing a lot of looking right now at the service utilization and what they're what services outside of the waiver, because there's a lot of state plan behavioral health services that some of these especially the children with the EPSDT benefit, there's even more, it's even more open for them for things that are medically necessary for them as well as the adults, but we're not seeing that much utilization in the children population.
Again, I just would caution us to think critically kind of about that utilization, because again, there is that push and pull of reducing caregiving services when we engage with those other things, and sometimes that
but if you do it
comes
through
into
state
play.
plan, if you access it through state plan, it does not impact the waiver hours at all.
Sure, absolutely.
One of the things, this is Melanie again, one of the things I found when I used to work in developmental peds is like in terms of trying to access EPSDT services, like home health agencies, I could get, oftentimes I couldn't get the whole, like I could get maybe OT or PT, but I couldn't get speech for the individual or behavioral therapy services. And so sometimes that might have made influenced decisions that were being made by individuals that were seeking a very specific type of service.
You. Let's see, Johnny, did you have your hand raised also?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. A couple questions, Pam, about the wait list for HCB. So 2,035 people are on the HCB waiver wait list. I guess will those be allocated at the start of the fiscal year?
We have slots now, and we're allocating like we can't allocate them all at one time, because then that just creates a separate problem. Then you have people just waiting to get their assessment, waiting to find a provider. So we allocate slots every week for HCB. I don't know. Now we already do have the slots for 7/1. So for start of fiscal year 25, we have the slots have already been approved by CMS, so they will be available beginning July 1. But we will do, we can't just dump all of them in at one time, because that just creates a separate problem, because the providers can't keep up with it.
Okay. How many per week? Do you have an average or something you shoot for to allocate per week HCB? Or
I think they allocate about between 50 and 75, I think. I'll have to check on that for sure.
Okay. And then is there a projected date that the HCB wait list would be eliminated with this periodic?
No, because we add at the rate that we add to that wait list. Let me see, we're getting 250 slots, and we don't have enough right now with the slots that we receive plus what we have available to wipe out the wait list. So there will still be a waiting list even after we allocate all of the slots.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And then a question about the SCL wait list. So 67, I think you said 67 people are in the urgent category for SCL. So with the newly funded slots, will people in urgent category?
Will they be
Yeah.
allocated? We're talking to
Right,
beat
or
it
will
and
they all
working.
be?
We're talking to beat it and we're working through that. They've done an excellent job recently, kind of going through everybody that was on that urgent list and kind of cleaning up the categories.
Okay.
But we are we have, and I don't know, I can't remember exactly when it's scheduled, but we're meeting with them soon to talk through what, how many slots we have now with what's coming in July, plus what we had gotten in the previous budget year that's now approved in the waivers. So we're looking at that to see what the best plan is. Something else that we did with SCL is we have moved. So money follows the person. We are reserving a few slots. I think we decided, 5 slots maybe that we're going to reserve for transitions using money follows the person. That had moved out. It had been done just exclusively in the waiver, which was problematic for someone that, because there's transition dollars, but if you're not on the waiver and you need help getting back into the community, you can't access those. So we have reinstituted transitioning using money follows the person for individuals going into SCL. So we'll reserve a few of those slots. Like I said, 5, 10 at the max that we would reserve for transitions to use for money follows the person.
Okay, so all of the new slots plus what you have already will potentially be used or be allocated to folks in the urgent category and not held in reserve for emergencies
We
only?
will still have to hold some in reserve for emergencies, because if not, what would happen is we'll have people that are in dire need of services that don't have a spot. So there will be some slots that will be held in reserve for emergency. We just haven't looked at what that number needs to be. There's a lot of analysis that goes into that. We look at, how close do we get each year at the end of the waiver year to having a wait list? What is it? What's our, what's the trend rate of the, how many emergencies that we're getting that we approve, that get approved each year. So we want to, it's a very fine balancing act. We don't want people waiting when we have slots, but yet we do want to have a reserve amount of slots for those individuals that truly something catastrophic happens and they need, they need services immediately. We want to be able to meet those needs as well.
Sure. Thank you for the clarification. I just wanted to, I know in many previous years, just like all slots were held for emergencies because it took all of them to
Right.
handle
Yes.
that. But
Right.
now
Exactly. But now we've been given, we have a little bit more of a buffer.
Okay.
Now. So yeah, because we were running right up to at the end of the waiver year, we were very close. We had managed to still not have a wait list, but we were very close a couple times. So, but now we do have a little more of a buffer with the slots that we've been given. So.
Okay. And one last question. Is it, we were on a call yesterday about the wait list, recommendations and concerns. And it was a little unclear about whether or not DMS is allocating vacant slots upon their vacancy,
We allocate.
or waiting on a plan from CMS or waiting on approval, or is that actively underway?
we allocate immediately upon when individuals vacate a slot due to death. That's been in process now for over 6 months that we've been
Mhm.
doing that. We are not reallocating immediately because for the other slots, and we talked to CMS about this, we have so many that come back to their slot
Sure.
that if we do that, that we will have people that had been getting services and maybe they fell and broke their leg. Something happened and they were out of service for 60 days. And if we give away that slot and then they come back and they need those services and we don't have that slot to give back to them. So we have not moved to do that yet because we've had so many situations where we give the slot back to the individual that vacated the slot. But we have been, for individuals that the reason is death, we have been reallocating those immediately. And that's been going on for over 6 months now.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. I thought that was the case, but there was some confusion about it yesterday on the call, but thank you.
Well, I think,
Pam,
okay,
sorry,
I'm
Rick.
sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, may I ask a question about the vacating of slots,
Yes.
Pam? Would it be possible, and obviously I know that this is not the norm at all, but would it be possible to create a voluntary relinquishment form if someone does just choose to leave the waiver? Would it be possible to create a form that they could sign saying that they're leaving, I'm not coming back, so we could reallocate that slot?
I mean, I think that's something that I can take that to the group that's looking at wait lists, because we can bundle that kind of research and see if any other states do that in with that research. But
Thanks.
I was just going to comment, I think you all have done a very good job of keeping that emergency list to 0 for the longest time. And just so I understand, how many slots do you reserve then, I guess, at the beginning of the fiscal year for emergencies? There would
so
be a
right
certain number?
previously, what has been done is it was, any open slots are reserved for emergencies. But again, that was before we kind of have had an influx of slots. So, it looked like usually it was between, I think, like 100, 125 maybe slots
Mhm,
that we would have. And then that would have to last, the entire year
mhm,
for any emergencies. And that includes kids that are, aging out of maybe that had been in DCBS custody, they're aging out, that transition into SCO residential. So um, that is what we're trying to figure out right now, what that number, based on historic allocations, what that number needs to look like and what we can go ahead and allocate.
For the purpose of keeping both the urgent and emergency to 0. So,
And let me, so, and we're looking at, do we even still have because honestly, there's no difference between, I know in the regulation, there's different criteria between urgent and future planning, as far as how soon services are needed. However, most of the individuals that are in the urgent category are receiving services in another waiver and don't want SCO right now. They don't want residential right now. So, and anybody, regardless of whether you're on the wait list right now, you're in the urgent category, or you're in the future planning category, you go through the same process to request emergency funding.
mhm,
So we're also looking at that too, and looking at, because there's people that have been on the urgent list for several years, but again, they're receiving services. They're happy. They don't want services right now through SCL. They want to continue receiving the services that they're receiving, and their needs are being met. So it's a little bit misleading when you think about the categories. Um, and so that's what we're looking at that too, as we look at the wait list, and also looking at, for Michelle P. and HCB, looking at an emergency process. So if something happens and you have somebody that's further down on the wait list that has an emergent need, looking for a process. So again, this goes to consistency, right? And how we manage things across waivers, but so that if there's an emergency need for somebody, regardless of where they are on the wait list, that they have a mechanism or they have a path to go to be able to get to those services versus somebody that may be having all of their needs are being met right now.
So the more you think about it, there may not actually be a need to eliminate the urgent list.
I don't know. Well, I mean, we're going to look at we still have to talk. We're going to look at the individuals that are on that list. But there may not be really a true urgent list
Right.
anymore, if that makes sense. I mean, it's really just, and it's really just a wait list. So, you know, there's a lot of work that's going into looking at it, and we're doing this very carefully and very thoughtfully because we do not want to cause anyone to not, you know, be able to get services that are going to need them, but we also don't want to have funding that we're not using. So we are putting a lot of work into this and very thoughtfully considering how we move forward with this. But we want to serve the maximum amount of people that we can serve. You know, and we also, this goes into our provider capacity too, and how do we grow our providers and who has the capacity to serve individuals. We don't want to, you know, allocate a bunch of slots and then have people not have anybody that can serve them. So it's really taking a holistic view of everything and how do we do this in the most efficient manner, but also the way that ensures that individuals get services.
Right. Well, very good. Is there any other comments or issues? I have one. I've discussed this with Amy, but I'm going to leave this TAC, and Amy, I think, has someone to take my place who would represent CAP in the nonprofit category. That would still leave this group having to elect or choose a chair. So how would we like to go about that?
Rick, we will probably need to wait till your replacement is there so we have a full TAC.
Okay.
And then on that agenda, we can put it on the agenda under new business. Someone can nominate themselves, another member, and then vote on it in the next meeting.
So that would probably be the first order of business then, I suppose.
Yes.
Particularly if I don't attend the next meeting.
I can always call the meeting to order and
Okay, all right. And of course, anyone who wants to have this job, they're also sort of they're obligated to participate in the MAC meetings too and give a report. So keep that in mind. Anyway, I would like to thank both Pam and Aaron. You've been really great to work with, and just thank you. So if there's no other business, our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.